I'm Dan Rogers. Today we're here with Les Simpson, who's running for re-election for the Amarillo City Council Place 4. Welcome, Les.
Hey, thank you, Dan. Good to be here.
Well, so you liked being on City Council so much, you're going to do it again.
Well, I am up for re-election, doing it again. And, the thing about it is, and you know this, 2 years is a pretty quick period of time.
Yeah, it goes
and,
by quick.
You got a lot to learn in a couple of years. And I've really been fortunate. I think I've had the opportunity to learn a lot of things. Knew a little bit about it going in, but until you're sitting in that seat and doing it, you don't really get the experience. And really, I just want to use those 2 years of experience and what I think the council has accomplished to continue working forward on those things. So I'd, would like the voters to consider reelecting me so I can serve those 2 more years.
So what are the top 3 or 4 things you think you've accomplished on the council?
A couple of things. One, I think we've been committed to public safety and investing in public safety, which as I campaigned last time and I campaigned this time, it's really a top priority for citizens. And what we found ourselves in is a situation where our salaries were really not competitive for our first responders, police and fire. And so we were able to give them some historic raises and really raise the competitiveness of our salaries up for the first responders. And we worked with them to do that. And we're already seeing some of the fruits of that. Our police academies now have nearly twice as many people applying as they did before. And of those, we still have quite a few more that are qualified that can go through the qualifications to being that. And the same is true with our fire academy. We also reinstated cost of living adjustment raises for city retirees. They had not been given a raise in their retirement since 2011. And that's another item that was hurting us in recruitment of police officers is that, other cities were providing that type of cost of living adjustment to be able to do that. And so we're looking at buying new equipment. We recently agreed to purchase new equipment for the fire station. We have much of our fire apparatus is aging and about to go out, or maybe should have gone out a couple of years ago. So we've got to be able to replace that. For our police side, we have motorcycles that should have been retired 2 years ago that we're now having to replace. So there was a lot of looking at prioritizing a lot of investment on the public safety side, and I think we've done a good job at that and being able to get us back to where we are. Still a little bit more work to do on this. While it raised the competitiveness significantly, I think looking at raising those salaries another time is something that I'm sure we'll look at in the next budget to make sure that we are competitive and that we can attract and retain public safety officers. Another area that people often worry about is getting their trash picked up and being able to do that. There are a couple of things that we focused on and doing. One is we're replacing dumpsters at a far more rapid rate than we were before. We invested. We're now at about 1,000 or 1,200 dumpsters a year, where before we took office, we were about half that. Before, your dumpster could be replaced about once every 26 years on the pace that we were before. We've cut that time nearly in half. And so because you can't have clean alleys if you don't have good dumpsters. And so, and about 1,000 or 1,200 is about all that we can get out in a single year period. So we doubled that amount. Also, illegal dumping in alleys has been a problem almost as long as there's been alleys. And we have put in a program, and we've tried. There's a lot of things that you can try to deal with illegal dumping, but unless you catch someone doing it, unless you have a camera there, it's really hard to prosecute. So we felt one thing that we needed to do is recommit to cleaning up these alleys. And so we've reinstituted a program that was done away, I think, about 10 years ago, where the city is now going out and cleaning up these alleys. We should get to all alleys at least once a year. And some alleys we may get to more than that because you've got a decade of illegal dumping that's been out there that's not been cleaned up. Another area that we focused on is, right when we took office, we had some historic flooding in the community. We've invested about $47 million has been set aside for doing things like dredging. Lawrence Lake was really the problem where we had the most problem with that. Mm-hmm. We had pumps that were not large enough and adequate enough to be able to pump the amount of water in a situation like that. We purchased some land to enlarge Lawrence Lake and dredge that out, where the new pumps that we are putting in at Lawrence Lake will pump water out at about 5 times the rate of the former pumps to get it so that we don't have those types of problems again. The city had already been working on flooding issues. If you go back and look at flooding on the north side of Amarillo, we didn't have any flooding problems or issues. One of the areas we had in the past was Martin Lake. And before we took office, the city had done a lot of renovation in Martin Lake, so that saved a lot of homes there. But south of Amarillo, where the growth has been going on, is where we were not equipped to be able to do that. So we set aside money to do that. So when you look at infrastructure, those types of things, getting your trash, these are the fundamental things that only government can do, and they need to do it well. And so we've really reprioritized a lot of funding to be able to go in these areas to be able to serve our citizens.
So why don't they just don't let people build in Palaya lakes and flood zones? Why are they letting them do that?
Yeah, that was currently. I don't think they're letting people be able to do that. And we just recently looked at an area out on Sonsi where we brought that into play, and they said, no, this is not an area that you should be able to build in that. So that should not be going on. And
well, before this council, I know they were letting them build down there, south end of the greenways. I'm like, these things are going to flood, man. Mm-hmm. Why are they allowing that?
Yeah.
You don't build in a flood zone.
Yep.
Just unless you want to get flooded.
Right.
Well, that's good. So you're making a lot of progress on public safety and trash and getting the alleys cleaned up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One other thing that we did find was another area that people were concerned about are roads. And we had put together a plan to begin to have more consistent investment in our roads. We had a plan the first year that I was in office to invest about around $1.4 million a year in debt that would give about $12 to $14 million of road work done. However, just as we were about to issue that debt, we found out from our bond counsel that money that had been approved in a bond for road work approved by voters in 2016, we had not spent all of that money. In fact, we had over $30 million left. And what the IRS and the Treasury Department requires is before you issue new debt on a similar type project like roads, you've got to spend I think it's up to 85% of the old debt. Well, we had not spent that. So we couldn't issue the new debt for the road work, but B, we had to immediately put in a plan to begin spending that down, which we have. You saw last summer, you saw a lot of paving and road work and road maintenance. We just recently have let a contract to begin the planning and studying work on Georgia. There's other work that needs to be done on Coulter, and some of that money is going there as well. But we were fortunate that we finally dug in and found there was I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of about $36 million that was still left to be spent that had not been spent before. And it's a good thing we found it, because if you don't spend that money, you could wind up getting in trouble with the IRS, which could affect bond ratings and those things like that. So we were able to do that. We've also, one thing you hear a lot about is potholes. And when we get snow and rain and those types of things, you have a lot of those. We purchased some new equipment at the recommendation of the city staff that will allow us to fill potholes at a much faster rate with fewer people than we do now. There's new equipment available. Right now, if we go out and try to fill a pothole or an area that needs that done, it takes several people to go out there to operate the equipment, make sure the traffic is going around. With new equipment that we purchase and are putting out on the roads, you can fix a pothole in a fraction of the time that it takes now with fewer people, so we can get to those sooner. So those have really been the things, those are things that, no one else is going to do those things. The government has to be able to do those. Nobody's going to come in and provide your police and your water and sewer systems and those types of things. And those are things that we've got to do, and we've got to do well for the citizens in our community and those that are paying the taxes and fees for these services.
I'm just thinking, it just occurred to me, if you have people that are dumping in the alleys, is it because they don't want to pay to take it to the dump, probably?
It is. I'll tell you a story. There's some apartment complexes over near 34th and Western that we had a real problem with that. In fact, I was in communication constantly with a citizen who was just tired of the illegal dumping. fortunately, we had someone had put a camera on that area, and they found someone who was within 10, 15 feet of the dumpster, but just dumps their trash out in the alley there in broad daylight. Yeah. Well, fortunately, that person had the camera. We went and we looked in there and we found the address of where that was and went to the apartment where this illegal dumping had occurred. Well, lo and behold, we found out somebody's son, who was about 10 or 11 years old, was the one that took it out there and dumped it. We talked to the parents. Now, we did not charge anybody in that case, but what happened is that father told that son, you need to get out in that alley and pick all of that up. So I don't know. It's just one of those things that people people come from different parts of town. We have businesses and restaurants and that do that. And, really it's up to citizens to do better than to do that. But in the meantime, that's not going to happen, and people still want their alleyways clean, and so that's why we've dedicated these resources to get those alleys clean.
I'm just wondering if you could pay people to take their trash to the dump. If somebody the private sector then would probably keep everything clean, and you wouldn't have to do it.
Yeah.
And pay them $30 a ton instead of charging them $30.
Right. Yeah. Well, that might be. I have to see the economics of the landfill to whether that would work or not. But because obviously it cost us to be able to take care of that waste out there. I don't know if that would be cheaper, and even if people would take advantage of it. But I think looking at being able to do that, and we'll see how it goes the first year. But I'm really encouraged that we can do a much better job of keeping people's alleys cleaner. Because one thing is, people like their dumpsters. Yeah. It's kind of a West Texas thing. This is the first city that I've ever lived in that has the dumpster system like it does, and it seems to be West Texas. Most people in other communities that I've lived in have had the roll-off carts that you roll forward. So people like the dumpsters. We don't need to take those away, but we need to make sure that we've got good dumpsters, and that's what we've done to be able to replace those much quicker and make sure that we have dumpsters that are not falling out. That's going to clean the area. Make sure that the trash doesn't go out, and then we also need to keep the alleys clean as best we can. And it's not fair to the person who owns the property next to the alley, because you don't know who brought the trash back there. Mm-hmm. You can't prosecute the homeowner because they may not have anything to do with it.
Sure.
So we do, if we have evidence and people can find the documentation, we can prosecute. But there have been times where the city's tried to put cameras to monitor some of this area, and people find the cameras and destroy them. And and sometimes they're hard to put at a good angle to be able to get the license plate so that we can say, okay, this is exactly who's doing it. I'm sure we'll continue to look to find and prosecute people who are illegal dumping, but in the meantime, we're going to get these alleys cleaned up.
Well, and with our wind, I think dumpsters make a lot of sense.
Yes.
Those carts, they're going to blow over, mm-hmm. and you're going to have trash everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's probably why we have them.
Yes.
So it seems to work pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
People like them.
They do.
So I guess the big controversy is about the AEDC issue. That's what everybody's talking about. Mm-hmm. What's your take on all that?
Yeah. Well, I think what we're doing and looking at the Economic Development Corporation and how it works, I have no problem with that. I think that's something that we need to to constantly do, and to be able to look at ways to improve it. Sometimes how we do it, maybe that's not, kind of been our finest hour sometimes, because I think we've had volunteers who've been volunteering on their time. And listen, there were things that were done that in retrospect, we realized it should not have been done that way. The people that did it said, looking back at it, the optics were on terrible. I think one thing it has taught us is when you're dealing with money and when you're dealing with public money, you've got to be above reproach. And the people that were on the EDC board there, I think they told me, we should have handled that differently. But also as a council, we need to be able to do that. The other thing that I think is good that we're doing is that we're putting more guidelines in place. We've looked at the bylaws and, because there really wasn't instructions and bylaws that talked about whether or not you could shift money if it was not spent. Could it go to other areas? So as we've gone through that's been able to clear that up. But the EDC is a real valuable resource for our economy. Are there ways that we can do things better? Absolutely. And we were as a council, we were talking about those things even before, last summer when some of the controversy came up. We're at a very important point now where this council is going to have to place 4 new members on the AEDC board. Those four appointments are going to be very important because we're at a critical crossroads for the EDC going forward, and we need to find good business minds, people that can really help us on that board and provide direction and oversight for it. And then most importantly, that board is going to have to hire a new executive director. So we've got a lot of work to do in the next 6, 8, 9 months on the EDC, which is getting a strong board in place and then looking at hiring a new executive director to move forward and continuing to work on our game plan and strategy on how we want to maximize that to help the economy grow. I mean, if you look at, Bell Helicopter is on the verge of having a huge project that we are in consideration for. And, Bell Helicopter has been tremendous to this community, and we want to be there to be able to support them and to be able to grow them. And I think they want to grow here as well. The EDC is part of that, of helping them be able to do that. So I think we're looking at, we've done a lot of things to put safeguards into the system to make sure everybody knows the ground rules of which they have to handle taxpayer money. And now we're looking to find the right leadership to move forward.
Well, I guess the Porch to Plains is coming through here eventually. Do you know what the time horizon is on that?
I do not know. I know the mayor serves on the Porch to Plains committee, and it's been a little bit while since we've had an update on that. I know that the next part of what they're doing, and you're already seeing some of the work that basically will produce a bypass for I-27 around Amarillo, and that I-27. And they're preparing the road on 287 north of here to become Interstate 27. And so they're going ahead as they're doing work, and you see work on the north side that's going on right now, but they're preparing that road so it can become an interstate. They're doing some of the work on there. The funding is there to be able to do some of the work that you're already seeing on the north side on bridges and those types of things. I still think that there's some work to be done on the funding that will then turn that into I-27. But as I understand it, the next part of that Porch to Plains will be turning where I-27 ends now. Well, actually a little bit before it ends, where the loop will go around. That will become kind of a loop. You could stay through. It will become Business 27 going through downtown, but the new loop will take you out on the north side, and then that will become I-27. At this point, going north. And then
instead of 287,
yes, it will become 27. And the goal is to eventually go all the way through the middle of the country with that. I don't think, as I recall, Colorado is participating in that Porch to Plain part of it, because there's obviously interstates that are right there. Still a lot more work to do on it, but the next thing that you're already noticing is work that's being done on 287 to make it, as they're doing the work and the repairs, it will make it where it can be converted into an interstate once they get the rest of the funding to go through for that.
Well, it's my understanding they want to make 287 a full-blown interstate.
Yes,
too.
Correct. Yes.
So you're going to have 287, I-27, and I-40, right, all converging here.
Yeah. Now, 287, I haven't heard that much about that, but I just know, I-27 is what we'll see next on the horizon, where it will go. It'll come out it'll go north out of downtown.
Yeah. So 287 will become I-27
Correct.
/ 287,
Yes.
I guess.
Yes.
Well, transportation's important, and that makes Amarillo a hub.
Yes, it does.
So from a, distribution standpoint, that's really going to make Amarillo a hub for a lot of different things.
Yeah, it can for production. I mean, obviously, we have an airport that has one of the longest runways in the country. It's in the middle of the country. So a lot of things in the position that we're at with, kind of being the crossroads, again, with I-40, and then as I-27 kind of becomes that Porch to Plains that we're, centrally located, that can get in either direction quickly.
I've never really understood why they didn't focus on the aeronautical industry, because of our infrastructure there that's just sitting there and not really being used. Mm-hmm. But, got Cessna up in Wichita, Kansas. They should be in Amarillo, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things that we could use that airport for.
Yeah. I tell you what's really going to be interesting, the new project that's coming out for Bell, is going to be a revolutionary aircraft called the Valor 280, and using the same technology that we've had before, but in a much producing many more aircraft than we have coming out of there. And I think what's envisioned is, and we have the land that's across the street from the airport where Bell Helicopter is. I'm pretty sure it's owned by the EDC, because if we begin to have projects much larger through Bell Helicopter, the companies that provide the parts and service there will have such business here that they very may well want to come and set up here. Mm-hmm. And so again, using that airport to be able to to do that, I think is something that you're absolutely right, because we have something there. And now we've got, a workforce that has, provided Bell Helicopter with what they've needed to be able to do that. Bell Helicopter right now is probably at the lowest number of employees that they'll have for quite some time. They still have hundreds of people working out there, but as they're kind of downsizing some of the other projects, that we'll begin upsizing when the Valor project is approved. So we're kind of in that transition period right now, but we want to be there to to support them, and they want to continue to be able to work here, because what they learned when we had the V-22 project, the Osprey, come here, is we could do it faster, cheaper, and safer than anybody else can. When that project came here, they were having some real problems with safety, and it was the Amarillo people that were trained and then went out there and were able to build it cheaper because we didn't have unions here, safer and faster than before. Obviously, the aircraft has still had problems from time to time, as most aircraft do, but it's an extremely safe aircraft, and it's kind of funny. You now see it on movies, TV shows. It's kind of unique. I mean, you see it all over the place, and every one of those was assembled and put together by Amarillo people, and I think we should be really proud for what we have done and the people of this community have done to support that, which supports the military.
So this new company is going to be using tilt rotor?
Yes, the tilt rotor technology with it's replacing, I believe it's replacing the Black Hawk helicopter. So the new technology will replace the Black Hawk, which there's thousands of those that are used. And it's such a big project, there'll be a little bit of work done in Fort Worth. There will be some work done in Wichita as well. They've already announced that. But looking to use the Bell Helicopter workforce and Amarillo to do the final assembly and a lot of work on that. So that's coming up here in the next few years. They've already been awarded the contract. They competed, for that, won that contract. Now it's just working out the final details of what will happen in what place, and then getting the final assembly here to Amarillo.
Is there any other big projects coming online, like Producer's Beef or anything like that?
That's a big one that I think is going to have a significant impact here. There have been some other smaller type things. There's there was a project that was produced not too long ago, going back to your being right here on I-27 and I-40, various types of food production. There's a company that's come here that is actually growing things, lettuce and other types of vegetables. We were connected with them through Affiliated Foods. They're a partner of Affiliated Foods, and they wanted to be here because it was a more central location. But I think if you're looking at really the major projects right now that are in line are producer-owned beef. We also and again with the Bell, we recently entered into an agreement with Tyson on working with them on their water usage and how they're being important here. I think they're going to continue to be a major contributor to the economy as well. So yeah, I think there's some of those bigger projects, and then we'll see once we get a new director on board and get that back and up and running, what other new projects may be out there.
Well, I think most businesses, if they find a community that's well located, has good schools, good public safety, low taxes, good infrastructure. That's all you need.
Yes. Yeah.
And they'll come.
Yep. And they have come in the past, and we need to continue that. We're on council. We're doing our part to keep the taxes as low as possible. We've actually rolled back the tax rate for the last 2 years. We have, and I'm working on those types of things that you're talking about. The roads. Is there more work to be done? Yes, we still have an aging water and sewer system, as does most of Texas. Yeah, I mean, it's not that we're unique here, but that part of the $47 million we've set aside for flooding is going to work on on that. And also, we have a wastewater treatment plant that is in need of repair, replacement, really, and it's going to be a pretty significant investment. We're already working on a variety of different funding sources to be able to fund the planning and the study of that, as well as the execution of getting that done. But when you reach 85% capacity of a wastewater treatment plant in the state of Texas, you have to be planning your next to replace that or to handle that. And then when you get 90%, you need to be under construction. We're hitting those marks right now, but it's going to be a major investment. And we're working, and staff is working to come up with as much out of this investment so that we don't have to raise the rates of our water and sewer users to pay for that any more than we have to. So, when we had the flooding back in 2023, that flooding did some significant damage to the wastewater treatment plant. It was already aging. It was already on the road to replacement. But that's allowed us to apply for some other types of funding through the Corps of Engineers and other places because of the damage that was caused by that flooding, because there were all types of things that were getting on our water and sewer system that was not intended to be there and caused damage to the plant. So it's a top priority for the council. It's got to be for the community, because we've got to be able to flush our toilets and handle wastewater, and that's a key part of it.
Yeah, water and wastewater are probably the two most important things.
Correct. Yes.
So, but I would think that a city should be able to fund their operations with the utilities. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, so in water sewer, it's part of an enterprise fund, which it self-funds itself.
Right.
So we can't, the users of that system, and there are other types of enterprise systems that we have well.
You can't take the money because you're regulated by the TCEQ.
Right. Yeah. So that would go back to the ratepayers. It's just like, so we can't take money elsewhere and move it over there. But we can, but we're applying for federal money that may be available, or state money that is available to help on the planning and execution of that. Because the truth is, we've paid a lot of that money. Local residents have paid a lot of money on that.
I guess what I'm saying is, okay, it's going to cost X amount of dollars. You have X amount of customers. You go to the PUC and say, we have to adjust our rates.
Yes,
we do. And they will allow it.
They will allow it. I think our goal is, we hope this thing is going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars.
I guess what I'm saying is, though, would that be a better way rather than raising property taxes to pay for it?
We would not raise property taxes. It would only be,
or issue bonds that have to be paid back.
Yeah. Now, what could be done is, as we're building it, we may have to issue bonds, but it's going to be paid back through the water and sewer fee. In other words, so it would be paid for by the users, because we're not going to have that much cash on hand in time to build it. So, but what we're trying to do is find as many sources as possible. So how much we have to raise those rates, we keep it as low as possible. I mean, so if we, like, for example, I think we got we were working at getting about $30-something million from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to pay for some of the planning work that has to be done on this facility. It's a very complicated facility to do. If we get that money, that just saves us from having to go to the ratepayers to pay that. So goal number one is to see what other resources can help us fund and build. And there may be, because of the flooding, there may be other types of funding that we may be able to apply for. Staff, I just talked with the city manager at the end of last week. I mean, there's a lot of things that they're looking into to help pay for that, so that when we do have to come back to the ratepayers to pay whatever the balance or remaining part of that is, that it's as low as we can get it. But I'm afraid even then, when you're talking about a facility that could be hundreds of millions of dollars, and you don't know how much it will cost when we finally start building it, 3 or 4 years from now.
Is that a digester system that you're using, or
just
sedimentation ponds?
Yes. Well, now you're getting above my pay grade. You'd have to get to the city staff to go. But yeah, we do have digesters out there, and to be able to do that. But all I know is to handle wastewater appropriately, to be able to to get it in a place where whatever's coming out of that is not going to harm the environment. It takes a lot of money and a lot of resources to do that.
Yeah, I'd be interested in taking a look at it and see what they're doing out there. Well, do you have a website where people can learn more about you?
Yes, lessimpson.com.
That's easy. LES Simpson, SIMPSON.com.
Yes, and kind of has a little bit about my background. I own a small business here. I help other people explore going into business for themselves.